Recognize Mr. Magaziner for the gentleman from Rhode Island for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chairman, and I want to thank our witnesses for having the courage to share their stories and their expertise today. We have real challenges at the border. I've been there, I've seen it, and I know that the American people are counting on Congress to act. Unfortunately, too many of my Republican colleagues are more focused on playing politics instead of working together to address our problems. The Biden administration has requested $14 billion to secure the border, funding that would hire more than 1,300 Border Patrol agents and more than 1,000 CBP officers. House Republicans have refused to call a vote on this funding for nearly 4 months. They have sat on this proposal for nearly 4 months, undercutting their claim that they really care about border security. If you care about it, call a vote. And if you don't like all of the proposal, call a vote on the parts that you do like. When House Republicans were asked why they won't call a vote on the president's border funding request, one of them said, quote, "Let me tell you, I'm not willing to do too damn much right now to help a Democrat and to help Joe Biden's approval rating." That tells you all you need to know. He was more concerned about Joe Biden's approval rating than about fixing the problems at the border. And he's not the only one. Laura Ingraham on Fox News said that Republicans should not accept any border deal because it would be, quote, "a victory for Biden." Even Speaker Johnson has openly mused that House Republicans will not accept more border funding until there is a Republican president. Now, some of my colleagues say, well, funding's not enough. We need policy changes at the border too. Okay. Over the last month, through the holidays, Secretary Mayorkas has been working diligently with Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats to try to come up with a policy plan for the border. Where have House Republicans been in those talks? MIA, not participating. They gave themselves a vacation for a month. Well, imagine if the reverse were the truth. Imagine if House Republicans were actually working with the Senate on a border plan and Secretary Mayorkas decided to go on vacation for a month. What would people say about that? Instead, this phrase, dereliction of duty, gets thrown around a lot. It is my House Republican colleagues who have been derelict in their duty. They have refused to call a vote on border funding for 4 months. They have refused to participate in the talks with the Secretary and the Senate to put a border plan together. What have they been doing instead? Playing politics. They passed a budget plan, the so-called Limit, Save, Grow Act, which would have cut the Department of Homeland Security by 22%, eliminating 2,000 CBP officers at the border. Every one of them voted for that. When the Biden administration requested $84 million to help states and cities with the costs associated with migration, House Republicans instead cut it to $0. Some House Republicans have openly called for shutting down the government this week, even though they know that that means that Border Patrol agents who are already overworked and underpaid would be forced to work without any pay at all. And now they are playing politics with impeachment, even though there is no legal basis for impeaching the Secretary. I've heard that this is going to be our final impeachment hearing. And still, House Republicans have yet to clearly articulate what laws they think the Secretary has broken. They have not brought in a single legal expert who is willing to put up their hand and under oath state that there is a sound legal basis for impeachment. The best they could do last week was a handful of Republican politicians. They invited the Secretary to appear in a hearing to defend himself against their ambiguous charges. And then when he sent a letter back on January 11th saying that he would appear, they reneged on his invitation and disinvited him. But the sad thing about these political games is that this is wasted time. This is time that we could be spending to work together on real solutions for the border, real solutions to solve the fentanyl crisis, real solutions to combat the cartels and create a safe and orderly system at the border. Senate Democrats are working on it as we speak. Senate Republicans are working on it as we speak. The Secretary is working on it as we speak. And it is only House Republicans who are putting politics ahead of doing the work to solve our problems. Professor, for those of us who are serious about trying to improve the situation at the border, is impeachment Congress's most effective tool to do it, or are there other powers that Congress has that would be better suited to fixing the situation at the border?
Thank you, Congressman. As I've said, impeachment in this context will have no effect on administration or American border policy. Congress has a host of tools at its disposal, as the Supreme Court recently listed, and as I've testified to, including, of course, appropriations, oversight hearings, the legislative process, Senate confirmations, withholding funds, and then, of course, as I've mentioned before, elections. There are others as well.
Thank you, Professor. I yield back.
The gentleman yields.